Hi, everybody. I'm Angela Fowler. I am the Executive Director of Cultivating the Early Years, which is an organization that supports progressive education for early childhood educators. Many of you actually may know me more, though, because I was at Erickson Institute and I was the creator of Town Square. I'm back actually now into my previous position as Executive Director of CEY. And tonight, I'm going to be mostly introducing the star of our show this evening, who is Diann Gano, and she's going to really be sharing a lot of how she works with loose parts materials. And we're really going to see the power of open-ended materials and what she's going to show us tonight. And also, Diane's running the slides, so she's going to have to do the clicking next for me.
Which would probably be now, huh?
Yep. So we really love this quote. When children play with loose parts, they enter a world of what if. This really speaks to what loose parts can do because they really are so open-ended and children can take it in any direction that they want, that it really is about nothing but what if this, that, the other, anything they want. So it's a wonderful way to start tonight, and we hope that you'll keep that kind of in the back of your mind and thinking about that. So we talked a little bit about starting an introduction to tonight. So we'll start with saying what loose parts are. So loose parts are open-ended materials that can be assembled, combined, and manipulated in a variety of ways and have no predetermined play patterns, allowing for materials to be redesigned and repurposed as the child sees it. They may be used only or alone or in addition to other materials. They can be natural or plastic materials. And many of our treasures are recycled items. Is it a treasure or is it trash? So in the beginning, we started out really kind of embracing the idea of loose parts way back in the 1800s when Friedrich Froebel, who was actually the father of kindergarten, started introducing the ideas of working with young children. And he encouraged us also to really work with what we had, with what was in our environment, and really embrace kind of hands-on approaches. And then that really grew into the work of John Dewey, who also really promoted the idea of hands-on experiences and working with children's interests. So these are really kind of the historical beginnings of loose parts play. But then the first time we actually hear of the term loose parts is actually in the 1960s when Simon Nicholson introduced us to the idea and theories of loose parts play through his article, How Not to Cheat Children, The Theory of Loose Parts. And we really encourage you, if you're really interested in loose parts, to look up this and really explore his ideas and his thinking, because it was really kind of the first time we got an idea of what's really happening during loose parts play.
I just want to say too, that's not a very long article to read. So it really is worth your read, and it's worth going to find. It's out there and on the web, and you'll enjoy it a lot. It's good stuff.
Yeah, it's fun. So I'm going to start out tonight talking a little bit about kind of the research behind loose parts play, and actually what we also call messing about with materials, and what we recently have probably heard a lot about tinkering. And tinkering is really connected to STEM, but it's the same kinds of ideas about working with loose kinds of parts. And you see a lot of different kinds of loose parts in this image here in front of you.
This is a classic of what the definition you just read to us was, where if it can be moved and manipulated, it comes into loose parts play at my house. And so she just went all over the house and found all these different pieces and just started adding to them. And it's very intentional. I hope you all catch this fever, because it's really magical and it's really powerful. And I hope I can show you through some more images tonight how great this is.
You're going to show them a lot of them. The one place we have to really start when we're thinking about what does it mean, what's the learning behind loose parts play, is start with the idea of divergent thinking. Divergent thinking is how our brains really make sense of things in different ways. We diverge our thinking as we are doing something or as we have an idea. We think of many other ideas that could go along with that. And this goes along with some research that was done with some young children on the idea of, and this was literally the research, how many uses can you find for a paperclip? And you as adults, think in your head right now, how many things can you think are useful for a paperclip? You could probably think of a few things.
Sorry.
You can, yeah. But the interesting part about this research is they did this with kindergartners, and the kindergartners literally came up with hundreds of ideas about what they could do with a paperclip. It was pretty amazing. They had lots of crazy different thoughts because they thought about paperclips in all kinds of different ways. Well, then they asked older children, you know, how many uses do you think of for a paperclip? And they had literally about a third of the ideas about a paperclip. And then they asked adults, how many uses can you find for a paperclip? And they, again, had a fraction of that. So it really demonstrates how important this process is for young children. And they are really constantly thinking about how to do things in different ways and how to explore things in different ways. And that's divergent thinking. And divergent thinking is an incredibly important skill for us all to have, particularly in this day and age where we continue to have new technologies, new learning experiences. And actually recently, there's some research out that said 85% of the jobs that exist in 2013, we don't even know what they are yet. So we really need to help children learn these skills and maintain these skills throughout their lifetime. So loose parts play encourages that divergent thinking. Obviously, the way you can just have open-ended experiences with them, it leaves you unlimited ways to diverge. But it also encourages something called the 4 C's. And the 4 C's come from more research around 21st century learning. And these 4 things are really key to the idea of what children need to be successful in the future. And one of those is that they need to be critical thinkers. As we said, we don't really know what the jobs of the future are. What we really need to prepare children for is to be critical thinkers. So we need to give them lots of opportunities really to engage in those kinds of experiences and critical thinking. We also need to be able to give them lots of experiences to collaborate. Diane is going to show you a million experiences that she has in her home where children are collaborating on loose parts play. And we need to provide them with exciting explorations where they can support creativity. And again, you're going to see so many images of creative play through loose parts tonight. And then finally, communication. One of the most important skills that all children need overall, but they particularly need it for 21st century learning skills. They need to be good communicators.
I just want to say one thing. So far, we've only shown a few slides. There are so many great ideas in here and words in here that I want you to use if any of you are out there grant writing. The 4 C's and tinkering and messing about, those are all hot buzzwords right now. So if any of you are writing grants, pick these out, write them down on a piece of paper, and be sure and throw them into your grant, because those are great words to use right now.
Divergent thinking, 21st century skills, all of those great ones.
Good stuff.
So lastly, we want to talk about brain development and loose parts, and actually just all kinds of development with young children, but starting with brain development. I'm sure you all understand or have a general idea about brain development and understand that really the largest growth in our brains happens with children when they're very young, in the early childhood ages. And the way that our brains are built is every time we have a new experience, we build new neural pathways. So it's incredibly important for children to have experiences. Now, this is where things get a little confusing when we talk about brain development. Often people think, oh, that means we need to give them more academics. That's not what it says about brain development. What it says about brain development is that children need to have continuous new experiences. And through those experiences, they build these neural pathways. As we talked about divergent thinking before, this is a great example of that, because a lot of those children probably didn't continue to have experiences that built their divergent thinking. They became less capable of doing those kinds of things. So what happens if you don't practice those skills, then those pathways get pruned out of your brain. So loose parts play is one of the best ways for you to really explore and promote brain development. Also, social emotional development, again, through the collaboration. Diane's going to show you some really, truly amazing images of children just cooperating together and working together, which is really building social emotional development, along with the idea of really working on working yourself and engaging in extensive focused work. If you look at this picture right here, this picture amazes me.
We laughed at this picture. We were talking about this picture today. Like, it's so amazing. And, you know, so to me, there's a difference here between a mess and looking at this. Like, this to me is not a mess. If you dump 47 boxes out on the floor, that's a mess. But this is so intentional.
And the spatial experience that this child is doing, I mean, look, she's literally made sure that there's almost exactly the amount of space. So the mathematics, the spatial experience that she's engaging in here, like you'll notice she has some cows that are 2x2. I mean, this is such an illustration. If you were trying to do an assessment and you wanted to do an assessment of, you know, spatial mathematical learning, this would be a beautiful example for that. Diane's also going to tell you some stories about how you can support literacy development. This is such a natural way to support literacy development through storytelling with loose parts. It's amazing. Obviously encourages problem solving, supports STEM, and probably one of the best things about it is it costs nearly nothing. You've probably got a ton of loose parts already. You can pick up pine cones and sticks on your walks. You can use recycled materials. There's so many loose parts that can be found materials that it's amazing.
So I just want to say, the child that made this, she was 4 years old when she made this, and this was actually at her home. And so if you're wondering how parents read into this, I'm not sure that they were quite, I don't think they knew what I was doing when I let all these loose parts play going on in my house. They just know I kept saying this word loose parts. And the mom sent me this picture and said that the cleaning lady had come, and this was in her daughter's bedroom. And the cleaning lady said, "I apologize for not cleaning your daughter's room. But I knew that there was something going on. I don't know what was going on, but there was something going on, and I didn't want to touch it." And I just appreciate so much that somebody looked at this and realized that there really was a lot going on in that little brain and didn't destroy it, because that's part of the lessons of adults for loose parts. You kind of have to leave them there for a while. So we'll talk about that.
The loose parts can be almost anything. Like we said, it can be natural materials, man-made materials, toys you already have, small toys. I actually collect vintage Fisher-Price toys, which have, you know, those little people with them. I know Diane does too. Those make for great loose parts. You can find loose parts anywhere. I tend to find a lot of the loose parts that I am using in Goodwills. But it's blocks, it's people, it's animals, it's magnetiles. We love magnetiles. Bristle blocks, Legos, recycled materials, you name it. Pretty much anything, unless it's a choking hazard for your age group, of course, can be a loose part. I really feel, though, it's important to make this point, because this is something that people don't understand about loose parts, and it becomes confusing, that not all materials really promote open-ended play. Even though they seem like they might, it's a lot about how you use them. So some materials encourage really closed-ended experiences, like this bus here really only encourages children to do one or two things on it. It's not open-ended. So what we're looking at through loose parts play is open-ended play. That's really what builds the brain development, what builds divergent thinking, and so forth. Also, some of them seem to only have one purpose. So maybe these bear paws in the front might be a patterning experience, might be a coloring experience, but depending on how they're used, they might not go beyond that. And what happens is that a lot of times the educators, the providers, the teachers, they may only encourage one use for materials, such as counting bears, which can be a lot of fun, but too often they're used as, oh, those are only for counting. We only use those for counting. We don't use those in the block area, which is another problem, restricting that and not letting children engage with materials in a more open-ended way. It's really the open-endedness that is where the learning takes place. You can have a lot of loose parts and only use them for patterning or only use them for counting, and you're missing out so much of the experience. And the other thing we do is we tend to say, oh, you can't take them from this area. So they don't go beyond what you've decided is the purpose of them. And again, then you're taking that away from the children. You're taking that experience away from them. And one of the ones that always really gets me is Legos, because Legos can be really wonderful loose parts, but too often they get put in a building area. They're not allowed to leave the building area, and they're only meant to build certain things, especially if you buy those little packs and it tells you the instructions on how to make something. That's not an open-ended material if you've got instructions and it's telling you exactly how to make it. So you can use lots of these materials, but just make sure that the way that you're using them in an open-ended way. So now gets to be the really fun part for me, because I just get to sit back, and Diane is going to introduce how she engages and uses parts in Under the Ginkgo Tree, which is her family childcare home, where she has been a provider for 32 years, right, Diane?
I know. I'm now that old lady. I'm that old lady who's been doing this forever, and you're like, why would she do that?
But Diane is one of, I met Diane a few years ago when I was working on the Town Square project, and I was going out to film in family childcare homes. And I went to her home in Rock Island, which was a Nature Explorer home. And I really fell in love with what was happening there. And if you've seen things on Town Square, then you've probably seen lots of images of Diane's family childcare home. And now Diane is actually also part of our Cultivating the Early Years community, and she is heading our family childcare programs for Cultivating the Early Years. So we're very excited about that too. So now let's have Diane share with us.
All right, so let's just sit back and get started and see what's going on. Storage, it's the #1 question I get all the time. So if you display your materials so that everyone can look at them and they know where they go, and you treat it that with respect, then they realize that it's not something that you dump out, that it's a piece of importance, and it helps the creativity because they always know where these pieces are. But I'm struggling with storage as much as all of you are, and I'm always trying new things. And so I'm going to show you some different things that I've tried and give you some ideas and see what works for you. Part of NAFCC is we believe that there are many ways of right, and so what works for you may not work for me, and it may not work for the provider next door, but it works perfect for you. And so I'm going to throw a lot of things at you, and you can see what sticks and what doesn't, and maybe get some ideas. So in the top picture, I used all the planters from the annuals that came in the spring, and I thought that was really good. They had drainage in them. And before, I had them just sitting out, and kids used them for buckets, and they got dumped all the time. And that kind of made me a little crazy because they weren't using them correctly, and I wasn't displaying them correctly. So then I put them back there and underneath these so that they realized that was not a bucket. And that worked out really, really well. I wasn't really thrilled with how it looked, but it didn't annoy me, so it was fine. And we always knew they were there, and the water drained, and that was okay. I use a lot of boxes like the little girl on the right. I use a ton of shadow boxes like that. I find them at Goodwills and all over. And if I just fill them up with different things, and I don't go crazy if they don't get put back in the exact same place. We all have that one type A kid who's going to dump them and put them in the correct order. And so I usually let that person do that. So the top picture and the bottom picture, those are both at my sandbox area. I think I forgot to tell you that. So the bottom picture was a window box that I just zip tied to my fence, mainly just to keep it out of the way. I mean, just so that it didn't get moved around. And then I bought the little IKEA galvanized buckets that don't have any handles. And I thought this was great. And I liked how it worked and it fit in there. But we have a pump that we use for water transportation. And these buckets always got dumped because they needed more buckets. So I can keep buying buckets and buckets and buckets, but they always would come and dump these. So that didn't work for me. So I had to keep looking. The picture in the middle, those are trays that we use indoors, and we use them for storage, but we also use them for framing purposes. That's our same little 4-year-old master over there. We just call her the loose parts master because she comes in every morning and just creates these amazing things. And it's gotten very contagious. And even our newbies that have just come in the last few months are starting to create these really elaborate loose part projects. And I'm really glad, because I was so afraid that we were going to lose our mentor before the younger group caught on. But it just like every spring, the letters and the numbers all come to the kids who need to come. The loose parts learning came into our group, and now it's used for everyone. So indoors, I use lots of trays like that. And outdoors, I've just discovered these colanders last summer, and I think I found the magic for me. And I'll show you some more pictures about the colanders, but I love them because they drain and they are not used as a bucket. I think that is the main problem solver for us, because the kids would never dump them because they don't hold water. So if you're having lots of dumping issues, I think it might be because you don't have enough buckets. And if you have something as an alternative, that might help. I also was just reading this really interesting article and this makes so much sense to me. The kids are dumping these buckets. One of the reasons that they're dumping them is they don't know how deep they are. So if you go into a room that has 14 buckets and you're looking for the red car and you don't see it on the top, it must be on the bottom. And so that might be, so I also like the colanders because they're shallower and they can see pretty much what's on the bottom, because I don't overfill them. So I'd rather have, if they're into Buckeyes that day, I'd rather have 6 colanders of Buckeyes than having the pine cones that aren't being used there. So okay, so that's my planters again. This is just one of those giant galvanized buckets, and that's where we keep a lot of our loose parts of our tree cookies in, our feathers or whatever else is floating around. So I also like the colanders because I can pick them up and move them and they stack. So I don't know, I'm really loving them. I've been trying to find them cheap online for you somewhere, but I have not found them. So I would just start collecting them when you see them at yard sales or tag sales or Goodwills or somebody that's moving. I would just kind of look for them. And
for people in Chicago, probably IKEA.
I bet IKEA does have some really nice ones. You know what? I've had these for over a year. They don't dent. They always present beautifully, which I mean, like, I want it to present nice to the parents and the children, but it's also important to me that that I feel good in I don't want to look at a bunch of plastic and colorful things. I just want it to look really, really natural. We used these all winter long too. They stayed outside, and a lot of things I like to move in and out, but the colanders stayed outside all day and all winter. We used them today actually because our neighbor gave us some shells, and they'd been sitting out all winter, and there was leaves and nastiness, and the kids were trying to clean them with buckets, and it was just not working. And then we put them in the colander and pumped the water through it, and it was like amazing. And I was like, oh, I love my colanders. So I also want to say, just because I'm seeing the slide right now, in the top picture I have shells. And I'm beginning, this is my own personal, I'm beginning to really like my shelves inside a lot more than outside. We decorate a lot of things and we use them outside a lot, but I'm noticing a lot of broken shelves, the bigger ones. So the big scallopy ones, they're broken and they're super sharp. So just be aware of that. And I don't know. I'll keep you posted on it. I'm kind of feeling it out, but it's something that I'm aware of that I hadn't been aware of before. So also in the top picture, and it was in one of my other slides too, I saw this deal came through on Amazon with plastic Tupperware kind of stuff, and someone had a great review about it. It's been in their sandbox for 8 years, blah, 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 blah. So of course I had to try it, even though I really didn't need any more. And it stained and I didn't like it at all. And I'm still going back to the metal. I'm really, really liking metal a lot better. It holds up, it always presents well, and I'm staying away from the plastic. I don't know what I was thinking. So here's an above shop of my colanders. We fill them up with different things every day. Shells are getting played with a lot, and maybe that's why they're getting broken. The Buckeyes and the walnuts. This week, the pine cones have not been played with, so then I switch it out. And so when I do a curriculum, I kind of watch where my kids played all day long. And then when I'm doing pickup in the evening and parents are getting picked up, that's when I give myself time to think about our day and think of how I want to expand on what they were doing today. So instead of writing curriculums in the morning, I tend to think about them in the afternoon and expand their play of what they were doing the day before. This is on the left is a slide from my friend Sharon from California, Sharon Kroll, and she collects Hart Rocks, and she's kind of got me, now I'm looking for Hart Rocks. It's kind of contagious. So it's just something I'm throwing out there, and I hope you all start collecting Hart Rocks because it's pretty fun. On the right, I found this great basket, and I paid more than I thought I would, but it's held up crazy well. And this has been going for probably 2 years in my house, and all the shells have stayed in there, and I like it a lot. I like compartments. So this was like from TJ Maxx and Marshalls, this little thing. And so I just have different colored gems on each side. And I like that it has a handle because then they can carry it all over the house. It does not get dumped. It's a very rare day if it gets dumped because they know it's on the bottom. It's just more of the same. So maybe that's part of our key. I don't know. I'm learning right along with all of you on this. These are my favorite pine cones. They're different than the ones you saw earlier. And those are our sugar gums, which people are, when we have friends over there, like, don't they throw these all over our house? But they don't. I mean, they know that they're for building. We throw balls and we don't throw sugar gums and pine cones. So it's baby steps. And so if you're wondering how to start this, I would not start with this many. I would start with, start with 5. Start with, if you have 5 kids, start with 8. Just start with a few, and I would mentor it so that they can see how it's played with. So maybe the first day that you're going to start with loose parts, I would bring like maybe 8 pine cones into your block area and sit down next to them, mess about with them. When we take the time to do that, it really is amazing how much the play buzz starts, isn't it? And just teach them, show them how you can use these in building. This is pretty common at my house. Someone had set this up outside. So we've got shells and pine cones and walnuts, and they brought in these bears. And these bears are like those 30, oh my gosh, they're older than that. They're probably 35 years old. They were my children. They still make them, and they're ridiculously expensive. And I never find them at yard sales, and I wish I did. But I also took the clothes off. I found that when I took the clothes off, I had read this somewhere, and it's true. They stopped being male and female, and they just became bears. And so I did strip all the clothes off, which could have been a choking hazard anyway, if you really wanted to worry about it. And they just became bears now. And I don't think we might have a clip of it, but one of our kids eventually, a few days later, created a 3 Goldilocks and the 3 bears. It was so cute. So these are all just loose parts. They build and they build and they build. And there's just a lot going on. And you know what? It's so much calm and quiet. It's magical. I love it. So because it's nature, all these things will eventually break. I mean, that's just how it goes. Those birch blocks in front of us, those are probably 5 years old. They're starting to get kind of nasty. Not nasty. They just aren't as pleasant to look at as they used to be. And this is one of our new friends, and she's 5.5, and she this whole thing of nature and loose parts is new to her. But I heard her telling my neighbor that she was at nature school. I'm learning all about nature here, and I was like, okay, sounds good to me. So this was another scene that someone set up on the left. It's just a pine cone that we put on a tree cookie. And then I don't get very many of my toys in the toy aisle. So this was like a Target Christmas. I get a lot of Christmas ornaments. So when Christmas starts going 75 and 90% off, that's when you start going and looking for your loose parts, because they're really well made. And there's just they're just the right size for all their thinking. But I really liked this picture because somebody made a bowl out of the acorn lid, and they put in this little baby pine cone. And I don't know, it's just so sweet. It's just so calming.
Great storytelling there.
There's what?
Great storytelling in
great
that.
Storytelling. I mean, it's just calm. It's just calm. It's a very different way of play. And I hope some of these pictures can ignite your fire for it, because it will completely change your program and completely change the way that the kids are playing in it. So I hope at the end, when we're doing questions, if you're embracing this, I hope you will share the stories with me about how deep and intentional everything gets and how focused everything gets. It's really amazing. The girls on the right all started, they're just creating. And when I try really hard not to ask what they're making, because it doesn't have to have a title. So they just call them their creations. I'm just making my creation. And I'm like, or I'm just creating. And they usually have to answer a friend. I don't try really hard not to ask. We recently last summer we started fairy gardens. And we actually have a fairy house now that is not these. Someone brought these to our house, one of the kids. And I was like, okay, we're going to go with these, because we really hadn't been building this. We hadn't really been building fairy houses. And it seemed like there was some interest there. So we have these large tree cookies, and those are kind of like they kind of treat those like their frames almost. And it's kind of their settings that they use. And so I brought in the materials, and it was kind of like a launch pad for kids that had never really showed interest in loose parts before. I think those nice colored gems, and I don't have anyone of choking age. I tend to have a 2.5 to 5-year-old program. I think the colored gems hold some magic to them, because it's something that they don't ever get to play with. They're inside bases, or they're inside, like it's not a toy for them unless they're playing Mancala. And there are bigger size gems. So if you and if you're looking for gems, please go to the Dollar Tree, that $1 store. They have bags and bags of them for $1. Don't pay any more for them. And you'll find those in yard sales all the time too. So we just had some corks and some people, and all of a sudden it kind of got everything going. And now we have a fairy house where the kids are writing letters. So even if they're just drawing a picture or a 2-year-old scribbling, she leaves them really special things. So it's pretty exciting. We play a ton with rocks, which I know everyone, if you would have told me 10 years ago I was playing with rocks, I would be like, oh my gosh, they throw them. Aren't they throwing them and breaking your windows? We've never had a broken window in 32 years. I don't know why we would start now. You know it's going to happen tomorrow now, don't you? We build a lot with rocks here. We have a set that we call our math rocks, and we just set these up as building rocks. You can throw balls, but we build with our rocks, and so it's a rare time that they are thrown. Usually it's a new child, and they're reprimanded by their peers pretty quickly. But I think rocks is one of the biggest ways that the building and the brain development really happen. It is crazy amazing what kids do with blocks. This picture on the left was made by a 2-year-old. I'm not even sure if she was 2. Those are her feet, and she intentionally went to the sandbox and got the sand to sprinkle on top of that. And there was all this chaos going around. I actually have a 4-minute video of her building this because it was just crazy watching her, how intentional she was about this as young as she was. So she's been really fun to watch grow up with loose parts. So Malaguzzi teaches us that the wider the range of possibilities we offer children, the more intense will be their motivations and the richer their experiences. So I try to give them lots and lots of different materials to play with. We keep our rocks outside in that box for storage, and they know if you have storage, please make sure that the same thing always goes in the same box, and it's always in the same area. It needs to be consistent so that when they're building a creation, they know where to go to find it. We love our tree cookies. We play with it. These are just slices of wood for those of you that have not experienced tree cookies. And what we love about these, they are plates, they are tacos, they are cars. I mean, like, there's 1,010 things they do with these. And so you got to get your hands on some tree cookies. Just ask someone to slice them for you.
And it's great because the tree cookies, you can make so many different tree cookies because every tree has a different look, a different feel, a different smell. And so that you hit all the senses while you're doing them as well.
We have so many tree cookies around our house that they also are used as art. So the markers will come out or the paints, and they just use them as a writing surface just because we have access to them. Loose parts. So, the thing I really love about loose parts is it's always developmentally appropriate. So if you're 1 and you find a log and you want to call your mom, you can do it. But if you're 4.5 or 5 and you're into, the language you learn best through is storytelling and creating scenes, then suddenly you have the 3 bears made out of loose parts, so it's always right. You never have to worry if something is too old or too young for them because they scaffold themselves and will find the materials and will grow along with the materials. On this day, we had been to the park and we had gotten this year we had more acorns than we could imagine. We had acorns. And so a lot of our play was around acorns. And these 2 girls started setting up this scene in our stump area. And they got, in the picture on the right, they filled up the cupcake pan and they had the bowls going and they had the shells going. And then they decided they needed some squirrels. So they ran inside and got the squirrels. And then they remembered, oh yeah, this is like the book. So then they had to run inside and get the book. And so it's Earl the Squirrel, which a lot of us grew up with. And they just created this whole scene. And this played out for like days of this play. So crazy. I mean, like, I never know what direction it's going to take. Oh, this is our little master builder again. So we were at our local park, and she said, who wants to build a fairy house? And everyone else was playing on the playground equipment. And so I think this took her about 45 minutes to build. And the others were all happily playing. And so when that happens, I work with the 1 or however many children. And this is my favorite thing to do when anybody's playing. I just say to them, what do you need? And she would be like, I need some more bark. So I was making piles of the bark, and she's like, find me some treasures. And I found some, some water bottle lids and acorns and whatever. And this is her creation. And I bet she spent 45 minutes here. The interesting thing is, this is at our city park where there could be some vandalism occasionally. And this was never touched for 3 weeks. So I think people that saw it realized that there was something really important going on and someone had made a creation and it was her artwork or something. I don't know, but she's always fun to watch. We're going to miss her in kindergarten next year. She'll probably drive the kindergarten teacher a little crazy. How many? I get asked this a whole bunch also, and I don't know the answer. Start small. I'm going to tell you, please don't start with too many pieces. It'll make you crazy and it will overwhelm your kids. We have been doing this forever and ever and ever, so they're used to lots of parts and pieces. But if it's something new that you haven't introduced, start small, and you can always add. You've got the supplies. You already have the supplies. You may just not be using them that way. One of our favorite things, and I don't have a picture of it, but there's some Haba game like Princess and the Pea, and it's got all these little teeny tiny mattresses that are just pieces of foam and a princess. And we played the game like twice a year, and I threw away the box and I just put them in the loose parts area, and it's probably one of the #1 things that gets played with here is these little mattresses and the queen that went with it. So kind of expand your own thinking on that. You don't want anybody waiting and wanting or crying because they don't have enough pieces. So whatever their interest is, that's what you're going to start bringing more into. So just keep adding. It'll work. And you know what? If something, I just threw away a whole bunch of pine cones that were not being used here because there's a specific kind of pine cone that gets used a lot more. Our play has completely changed. Those of you that know me know that I hate branded materials because the kids, if it's Disney or Nickelodeon or anything that's attached to a movie or a show, they tend to just replay those stories. Even when they pretend, they just do the script. Well, once we removed all that and we brought in loose parts, all the scripted play left. I mean, occasionally they'll bring something in, but because we don't have those pieces available to them, we tend to get this deep kind of stuff. And so the other kids were not playing here, so I don't know if you can tell, but in the picture on the right, I kind of make a circle, like a half circle around her of supplies that she might want to use or that I saw her using yesterday. So it kind of gives her a little bit of a boundary to create, and if the kids are running around the house, they don't run her over and break her creation, because that would not be pretty. We talked a little bit about how that sweet lady did not destroy her project on the left, and it's the same on the right. You have to give them time. They'll tell you when they're ready to take it down. Sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired of that. If they're still playing there, I would leave it up. Or if we had something outside that was going to get destroyed and I knew it was going to rain tonight, there's a lot of reasoning and they recognize it. And sometimes they're ready to take it down in a matter of minutes to start with a clean slate. So just kind of watch them and you'll get to know your kids and where to go from there. Give them a gift of time. And let me tell you, this will buy you lots and lots and lots of quiet time. And to me, this does not look like a mess. There's a lot of things that look like a mess, but there is just so much intentionality. When your kids start building like this and you start looking at what they've done, the intentionality, like in all of this, somewhere there's probably a bear tucked into a bed. I mean, like they know what they're doing and what they're creating, and it's really interesting to watch. This was just more of those girls that this went into 3 rooms. And so that's why we have 3 segments. They just kept expanding on it. And so it eventually went into the foyer. But this is the main walk area that the parents come in on the far right. And by mid-afternoon, they were ready to take it down. It wasn't one of their favorite spots. So I love this because they all learn differently. And I feel like loose parts kind of let you find out how they learn and what learning style they have and what you need to expand on that to create that for them. You will find every curriculum outcome that you will find it. It's all there. If someone challenges you about your curriculum, you will be able to document this, I promise. I need you to accept that anything not nailed down in your playground or your home will be used during loose parts play. My playrooms, it took me a really long time to figure this out. They were like moving my furniture around. And then I realized that they think my furniture is loose parts. like they know the table and chairs can be moved throughout the different rooms. And so all of a sudden I'd see my stuff moved and it was driving me crazy, but now I just giggle because I'm like, well, it's a loose part. Of course they play that way. We spend a lot of time in nature. This picture was actually at our botanical center where they don't have the rocks by the by the water play, and it's in the hot sun and no one ever plays with them. So I always go and get the rocks and bring them over, and then I take them back because I think it kind of bothers them because they don't know about loose parts over there. We use a lot of fabrics in our loose play, which I feel is like one of the areas that gets overlooked. And these are our play sets that we dyed with Kool-Aid. Just Google it. It's really fun, and the colors are brilliant. And this day we added, it was a windy day, and one of the kids mentioned how windy it was. So we put them in the trees. They aren't normally in the trees. They're normally capes or something. But I wanted them, we were capturing the wind, and so that's how that picture came about. Loose parts enhance children's ability to think imaginatively and see solutions, and they bring a sense of adventure and excitement to children's play. This is a picture, you know, she's used to having, we do a lot of painting with water and painting our rocks with water here, and there is no paintbrush. This was at the Botanical Center, and I found that she found a piece of mulch and she's painting with that. So it's divergent thinking. They start thinking outside the box. If they build it, they will play with it. They will play in it. They will play on it. They don't, or they'll just build. They'll just build and build and build until they're done, and then it's done. But it will keep them busy and buy you so many hours of quiet time. Here we're kind of back to, oh yes, I brought out the nutcrackers when we had such an acorn explosion, because look at all that. Look at how we're creating all those muscles for our fine motor skills, because I don't really push pencils and crayons and writing skills here. I'm trying to get them ready for all those things. And so we do a lot of belly swings and a lot of crazy things like nutcrackers and acorns. So
well, if you think about like fine motor skill with loose parts, that's, I mean, the way you're placing those things. I mean, there's a lot of fine motor play in loose parts play.
So fun. So we try to respect our children's rights to choose the resources they want. So we offer them lots of things, but remember, start small. Start small. You'll get there. Just take your time. Some educators recommend the 5-to-1 ratio for 5 parts for every 1 child of whatever you are working on. I think that's a little high for starting off, depending on the age of your kids. I want you to be successful at this. Because it's so powerful and so magical. So start baby steps, and if it's catching on early, you have the pieces, so you can always add, but it's hard to take them back. So just start out small and it'll all work. When someone is waiting for something, it's a perfect time for us to use our teach social skills and say, and I actually say the words exactly for them. When you are done, will you please pass them to Ben, because he is waiting. And then they get old. They hear it enough times that they can ask themselves. The older kids are definitely good at swapping, but you've got to watch those 5-year-olds, because boy, they can manipulate our little ones to no end. So beware of them. They think they rule the roost sometimes. Actually, these 2 mounds of dirt were placed in our local park, and this was loose parts play for like 3 days at least, as we all went over there and jumped over these. And then we have pictures of kids who were just throwing it up in the air because it was windy and it would blow. And we spent a crazy amount of time here.
Let's go back to that last one, Diana. We'll take questions on that, and then we'll finish with
that would be nice.
Okay, great. We have a few questions to get through. So we'll just start hitting the ground running. So first question is, do you have grass in your yard, and do you keep the loose parts out of the grass? Their yard is 90% grass, and it takes forever to search for all the loose parts before they mow.
We do have grass in our yard. We have a lot of bare spots, but we have a lot of grass too. I was thinking, I think you might have asked me this at the last one, and I was thinking about it. I think we use bigger parts outside. So I think that kind of helps. So I think the smaller parts we tend to keep indoors or up on the deck or maybe on your patio, like maybe, and I like to let them come and go, come and go, come and go in different areas. But I think the pieces that I have outdoors that I worry about getting mowed over, and most of mine are natural materials. So if you mow over a pinecone, I could care less because we have lots of them. But I think bigger shells, bigger rocks, bigger, if they're bigger, then you'll see them and it's easier for a pickup is all I can tell you. I don't know. I'm still learning with you. I'll work on that and let you know.
Yeah, I think that particularly to make sure that you don't get overwhelmed in playing with loose parts. You do need to start small, and you need to start by making some rules for yourself. So like Diane says, maybe there's only certain loose parts things that you're going to start with outside and see, do those things end up in the grass where you're constantly mowing over them? Then maybe you change to a different loose parts. I mean, I don't think that you can start off and doing some of the things that Diane's been doing here. There's a lot of loose parts that she's dealing with it. Like she said, she's done it for many years. So start out slow, see how it works for you. And then if it doesn't work for you, tweak it so it does. If you don't have a positive experience with it, you won't stay with it. So starting small is always better.
I agree.
Okay, next question. This person lives in a cul-de-sac and they don't have any access to a lot of materials as artistic as the ones that you've been showing, Diane. So they're asking any ideas on what their family childcare can do.
We didn't always have these wonderful materials. They will come. I promise you they will come. I would start, I would start with your blocks. I know you have blocks. That's loose parts. But you know what? Bring something in that you have never put in the block area before. Maybe bring your pots and pans or your spoons. Bring in your dolls. When your kids bring in a doll and they use blocks to make a crib, that's loose parts. That's just a different look at it. And I understand exactly what you're saying, but that's the beauty of all of us having different things and different materials, and you work with what you've got. So I would suggest, where are your kids playing the most right now? That's the area you kind of want to work on. Are they playing? So if we're outside, are they playing on the bikes if you have a bike area? So what can you bring in with the bikes? Do you want to bring some sponges and some water, to have a car wash? Do you want to bring some baskets that they can be delivery people and throw in some even fresh, real fruit? I mean, it will, once you see it, how it grows, you'll be good. So just think about where your kids are and where they're playing. That's the number one thing. Indoors, outdoors, it doesn't matter. Where are my kids most likely to be found? And that's the area you're going to bring your loose parts in to start with.
I'm assuming you're talking about natural materials, but I'm going to speak to both of these, and I'm going to say something I can't believe Diane didn't say. For one thing, for natural materials, try home goods stores and your park district. I mean, often you can just pick up, pieces of wood and get them cut into tree cookies and those kinds of things, and collect pine cones on your walks. Exactly. But another place, I tend, because we do loose parts workshops within CEY as well, and I find so many loose parts at Goodwill and at Salvation Army, particularly Salvation Army, because they tend to package them a little bit. But then the other place that I happen to know that Diane finds a ton of loose parts kinds of things and beautiful things to hold her loose parts is at Home Goods.
I do love Home Goods and Marshalls and TJ Maxx, because the toys that we buy tend not to come from the toy areas. Remember I told you that? I get them in these amazing places. So I think in one of those pictures we might have had a giant wooden toadstool that came from, here's the thing. If you look at your Crate and Barrel right now, Crate and Barrel magazines and your West Elm and all of those, natural materials is like the theme of all of them. So look at what they've got. Find, we definitely get a lot of our shells from Goodwill. But any of the base fillers, I have found some really, the base fillers are like the best kept secret of loose parts. We found some really cool driftwood there. They tend to be in bagged clear plastic, that cellophane bags. Look for them. That's where they are. I did forget that. That's a great spot.
Yeah, and Home Goods is always, I mean, it's generally like, outlet stuff. I'm sure you guys have a Home Goods somewhere around you, close to you, or Marshalls or something. But then look for the packages that have maybe like busted open and a few pieces fell out. So they're selling really cheap. You only need a few pieces anyway, so they're perfect for you.
Okay, great. Next question is kind of clarifying the ratio you were talking about, I believe, Diane, about the 5 parts to one child. And so they're asking, is it 5 parts or 5 types of parts for one child?
Usually the ratio is 5 pieces, 5 parts for each child. You're going to have a lot more than 5 types. But remember, start small, maybe bring in one maybe 2 days later, bring in another one. You will get to the amount that I wasn't always here. We baby step everything and we learn as we go. And you
Make
see
yourself a loose parts tray.
It's what?
Make yourself a loose parts tray, one tray that has like 5 little things on it, and see how it goes.
And they can be 5 different. You can start with 5 different things.
Mm-hmm.
There's no right or wrong. You will find your way. You girls are so smart. Well, you've got this. You're already doing. I think you're already doing it. You just aren't aware that you're doing it.
You want to switch to the last slide, Diane?
Oh, okay, sure. Maybe. There we go. Oops.
So this is just Diane and I's contact information and the website to Cultivating the Early Years. We have some information on there. We actually have a loose parts online course that you can take where we have a lot more information. It's about getting started with loose parts. And so you can check that out. And you can also go to our Facebook where you can find out information about some other things that we're doing. We do loose parts workshops as well around the country. So that's it for us, I guess. Nicole, are you wrapping this up?
Yeah.
Oh, let me say, I'm sorry. Can I say one thing?
Yes, of course.
We wanted to make sure that if you wanted to take a loose parts class, that we gave you a discount code, which is capital CEYNAFCC. So CEYNAFCC. That's the discount code. And it's 30% discount off of the class if you want to take a class, an online class.
Great. Yeah, so there's still some questions. I can email them to you guys, or if your questions get answered, Angela and Diane, is it okay if they email you guys?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely fine with us.
Okay, great.
Please do. Please email us. I mean,
there's a lot of great things coming in and a lot of great discussion I think is being generated. So we'll kind of just leave it at that. Sorry if we didn't.
So I see a lot of questions about infants and toddlers. Go find the book Loose Parts 2.
The toddlers.
Yeah, Loose Parts 2 is for infants and toddlers. It is amazing. Oh my gosh, it's not even a book that you even have to read. Just look at the pictures and it'll give you so many ideas. One of the ideas, I just got the book and I haven't even had time to really look at it, but they used these ropes and I think they came from the pet store. I think they're ropes that kids, and so the babies were chewing on them and carrying them around the house, but they were just so much calmer, and it's just a different way of playing. So be sure and get that, both the Loose Parts and Loose Parts 2, but Loose Parts 2 is specifically for infants and toddlers. Really great stuff in there.
Great. And just for those of you that are asking as well, we will be sending out these slides. We'll make sure that you have access to that as well as the recording, so you can go back and revisit all of these great ideas and resources that Diane and Angela have shared. So with that, we'll go ahead and end. Thank you guys so much for being with us here tonight, and thank you to Diane and Angela for presenting.
Thank
Thanks.
you. It was so fun. Come see us again.
Bye-bye.